Good morning, everyone. So, this morning we have Krista Mitzel, badass female attorney and partner. She's going to share her journey through entrepreneurship, helping the community, just being just a general amazing person. We're here for all of that. So, we're about to go live with this right now. So, here we go. Good morning, everyone. Paula Mattisonsierra, um, owner of Power Marketing SF, and your host for today. So today we have on the show with us Krista L. Mitzel, entrepreneur and business savvy employment defense attorney. Thank you so much for being on the show. You
Thanks so
know
much
you have
for
some
having
Paula
me,
love
Paula.
going.
Yeah, thanks for having me, fellow Capricorn Unite.
I know, right? I'm going to jump right into it. What drew you to the field of law? Because I don't know, I just never assume your kind of vivacious personality goes there. I'm sorry, I'm making judgment. Don't email me. Thank you. I don't need it. I'm just
Well,
asking.
it is interesting. A lot of people meet me and say, "Oh, I'm so surprised you're an attorney." So I guess attorneys have a certain reputation. Um, my interest in law came in multiple ways. So I was interested in journalism. So back in my younger days, I did a lot of writing and researching and sharing stories. And in college, I started working in politics. So I worked for several assembly members and congresspeople in the Bay Area when I was at Berkeley. And I ended up getting an internship in Washington, D.C. with Dianne Feinstein. And so going back to D.C. and seeing the underworkings of government and what happened, it always seemed that everyone was an attorney or had been an attorney. And when I came back from that experience and was trying to figure out my path, there was consulting, journalism, writing, teaching, law, perhaps. I had some interesting conversations with my parents, and really what it came down to, they was like, oh, lawyers are so smart. And so there was this pressure of, oh, that would be a great prestigious job. But they also paid a lot better than the jobs I'd been offered. And so I said, all right, well, I really enjoyed learning about the legal side of these issues and how lawyers impacted a lot of what went on in government.
Yeah.
And so I said, you know what, I'm unsure of what job I want. So I kind of copped out and went to graduate school, and it ended up being a great decision. So
Yeah,
that's how I ended up
absolutely.
here.
Lawyers get such a bad name, but we forget that they're the savior for people who are injured and going through bad job situation. I mean, that's your area and businesses getting protected properly. It's like,
And it's a
you
great jumping point. A lot of business people, politicians, journalists, doctors, they're all lawyers. They have that background. So whether they learn the education or translate it into a legal job or something else, it's a great foundational way of thinking.
absolutely. All right, so tell me, what was that moment when you said, Ugh, I got to start my own firm? What was that?
So I took a very traditional path. I was a summer associate at law firms when I was in law school. I learned a lot about corporate law. I decided at that point in time I didn't want to do a criminal path. I wanted to do more of a civil path and work on businesses. But then you have to decide, do you want to be a litigator or a transactional attorney? And I really admired a lot of the litigators I met in my path. So a lot of my decisions were based on experiences I had. And I was very lucky. I worked at some amazing, very large, prestigious law firms, had so many wonderful mentors and people training me. But at one point, I felt like it was all fight all the time.
Yeah.
And law firms were really focusing on the litigious part of the job as opposed to counseling companies to avoid getting sued and putting effort into that. And it might have been a financial decision, money's in litigation. It might have been just personal interest or just the business model. But I really felt like, gosh, we're spending all this time fighting when we could be helping companies do better and use the law to grow and thrive and focus on what's important. And so, my firms changed over time, and I decided, this really might not be for me. I thought I didn't want to be a lawyer.
Yeah.
And so I had just gotten, I'd married and I had a new job. And, about a year and a half into that, I was really getting disillusioned. And it was right around, I'd been practicing 7.5, 8 years. And I really got some encouragement from, my then husband and my family saying, you know what, let's take a break, reset, see what feels right. And within, 3 weeks of my, little self-proclaimed sabbatical to find myself and figure out what I wanted to do, the clients I'd built up started calling. And I remember having a conversation of, being asked, what do you need to do to help them? And I said, I guess I need malpractice insurance. So I remember I spent like $548 on a malpractice policy, and a law firm was born on my kitchen table, me and an associate attorney taking calls, helping clients, walking the dog. And that was in fall of 2009, right in the middle of a recession. So everyone thought I was a bit nuts. And that was October. By March of the next year, I had about 25 clients, and I stopped looking for jobs, and everything kind of grew organically from there. So it turned out that a little disillusionment really kind of spurred me into where I was supposed to be. So sometimes you have to, if the door opens, walk through it and see where it takes you.
Absolutely. I think bravery is that moment of fear, right?
Well, I don't know if it was so brave. One of my regrets is I wish I'd been more purposeful about it. I wish I didn't have to get burnt out to kind of have this aha moment. But, it did all work out. And I realized that it wasn't that it wasn't that I didn't like being a lawyer. I didn't like the environments I was working in. And so once I changed the environment and was able to create my own philosophy of how to set up a company and a workforce and a culture, I really did enjoy practicing law. So there's a lot of different ways to do the same job.
Yeah. So if you don't like the environment, you can change it.
You can. So it means either going to another company or sometimes doing it yourself. So
exactly. And sometimes, we're not necessarily saying that you have to start a business, folks, but wherever you are, I feel like you can also make changes as well.
Well, and even at big companies, I had friends who were at similar law firms that I was at, but they had a different mentor or a different experience, because it all depends on the people you work with. And sometimes you just don't click with certain people. That's why I'll always have a job as an employment attorney. There's always friction among people. And so I think sometimes finding the right place for you where you can be yourself and use your skills and your special, unique, special sauce is important.
So let me ask you a question, because you are doing a lot, besides just running your business. How do you balance that responsibility of your professional, your community, your family? And, it's like, because your children are still young, but, you're juggling the balls, you're juggling the balls,
Yes. And I definitely added a lot of extra balls to the mix. So I think part of it is also deciding what you're interested in and what you're capable of, because life is about prioritizing. And I've been lucky that I've been sort of a go, go, go person since I was a child. I'm built this way. It's hard for me to sit still. So I really do enjoy the go and being busy and taking on a lot, which isn't everyone's jam. Not everyone enjoys that level of intensity or energy. So for me, I think the way my life succeeds is that I've really prioritized. I've surrounded myself with great people at work, at home, to really help. And I've been lucky enough to be able to have those resources to help support me. Use your family, use your friends. But also, it was hard for me, but you have to be willing to say no and deprioritize certain things. So it doesn't mean that women can't do it all or men can't do it all. It just means you might not be able to do it all at the same time. And so try to figure out what are the highest priorities and what needs to get done. So, the night before, I always prioritize what are the 3 things I have to get done the next day. And then it changed my perspective, because if I did those 3 things, I'd had a successful day. So if I happened to do 8 things, it was just cherry on top. And so I really had to reframe my perfectionism and feelings of what it means to be successful and how much I was achieving. And I still struggle with it. So even though I've accomplished a lot, I still sometimes wake up feeling like, oh, I haven't done enough, or I'm behind, or how am I ever going to catch up? And part of it's just accepting that if you're going to take on a big job and have a family and a life and friends and do all these things, that there's going to be a level of, stress and continuous pressure, and you just have to kind of be okay with it.
Yeah, yeah. That sounds like something my mom said. I said, "How did you take care of all that stuff and six kids?" She's like, "Well, you made the decision to have six kids, so you know you're not going to sleep for a while, you know."
Well, and I think they
Do it.
always joke, if you want it to get done, give it to a busy person. And there's something to that,
Yeah.
people joke like, how did you get all that done? And well, at the same time that I don't ever drive anywhere without being on the phone doing something, right? I'm always on the phone talking to a friend or doing a work call. If I'm sometimes I just exercise, but if I'm exercising, I'm doing it on a walk with a friend, or I'm listening to a podcast or reading a book or
Yeah.
enjoying music. So I kind of we always joke about the twofer, right? If you can hit more than one buckets at a time, it's important. So
No, I'm familiar with the twofer. I love it myself. So, one of the things that I heard is yes, you were in a challenging industry for women, but you saw that rock and you just floated around it. Can we talk about some of these challenges that are just facing? I was going to ask you about the legal profession, but just kind of in general as women, what are some of the challenges that we're seeing in front of us? And how do we flow around those, As
well,
I think
I think
Bruce Lee said, be like water,
that
flow.
right. I think that, women, and I'm not saying men don't experience this as well, but women end up taking on a lot of of the family duties for their own children and for their aging parents, for example. So that sandwich generation nomenclature isn't a joke. Right now I have two boys, 8 and 10. My dad passed last year. My mom is aging and needs extra help. And so I have to handle all of those family obligations. I'm a single mom, and so I do that on my own, and an only child. So I don't have any siblings to share that with. And I think that even though men are doing more, which is amazing, and stepping into roles that have traditionally been more female dominated, there is still this idea of women being the primary parent or the primary organizer of the family and the social life and all of those kind of social needs that come around it. And I think that it is the reality that women are still facing a lot of sexism at work. And to this day, I run my own firm. I've been practicing over 20 years, and I will still be asked to get coffee or kind of demeaned in certain ways that are surprising in this day and age. And I think that I'm hoping as men become more educated, I think the Me Too movement, pissed a lot of people off, but it also opened eyes to some of the differences that women were experiencing, people of color, Black people, and just the different experiences that people have. And so if our male allies can get on board and support, that's what will help producing change, is having people in positions of power see the importance of learning about DEIB, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging issues, thinking about how you can make a seat at the table for more women and more diverse people. And I think that the more we do that over time, it's very important. So having those different opinions and perspectives represented really does help people learn, and it changes the way we decision make.
No, absolutely. I think this question flows right perfectly into the next one that I want to ask. How do you build, how important is it to build a network and networking in general? Um,
Well, I think that networking is very important if you want to be able to have control of your life. If you are an individual contributor who is reliant on other people for the work that you are doing, you will always have a boss to report to. If that works for you, that's great. Some people don't enjoy networking. I will say though, I'm an extrovert, if you haven't figured it out, but for the introverts out there, there are lots of ways to network to different types of personalities. We all don't network the same way. So if you're interested in that, you can find ways to network that work with your personality and your interests. But if you don't have a book of business and you aren't a moneymaker for a company, you will always be beholden to what their needs are. And so for me, having my own client base, my own group of people that I refer to and who also refer me business, trusted advisors and other professionals who we work with together to make sure the client is best served, that has really given me a lot of independence and power to create the life that I want. And so having a network that is out there acting as your sales force is really important. And so you might have to do a lot of work, be strategic, align yourself with the power partners that typically would be the best referral sources for you and that you might refer business to, but also find people that you enjoy spending time with. Networking is not fun if you don't enjoy it. And if that means you want to go on a walk with your best referral source once a week so you can connect and talk about business, or if that means you enjoy, going to get a drink or going to coffee or doing a Zoom or sending each other white papers so you're both up to date on the latest trends or, intellectual capital out there, whatever works for you, do it. But if you don't have that network and book of business, you'll always be a little handcuffed to be at someone else's bequest for a job.
Well, let me ask you a question. It's like, okay, so I love the ideas that you offered about ways that we can make networking work for us. But is there a process that you have? You are there with a person, you're walking, glass of wine, coffee, what have you. Do you have a specific process for that interaction?
So I haven't necessarily defined it. Defined it. I kind of go with the flow and read the room. But I will say this. Number one, you need to be a good listener. People like to talk and they like to talk about themselves. So whether it's a business development partner, a personal friend, a client, if you ask a question that's open-ended along the lines of, what are you working on these days? Or what's the most interesting project on your desk right now? Or what keeps you up at night? Yeah. And you get them talking, they're going to tell you a million ways that you can help them. And most of the time, people don't have someone they actually feel wants to listen to them. So if you take the time to slow down, be patient, and listen to what's going on with them, you will be able to help. I also think it's really important to make the ask. And I think that, historically, men have been better about this than women. But when you're with someone who could do something to help you, don't be afraid to ask for the help. So for example, I was with a client the other day having lunch. She's amazing. Love her. Been a long-time client. We work with everyone in the C-suite at this really big company. Yeah. And I said to her, we really love working with you. I'll call her Jane. Jane, we love working with you. You're one of our favorite clients when you call. Do you know any more of you out there from your different networking groups or people that you work with that you wouldn't mind introducing us to? And she sat there and she was like, of course, I actually was thinking about connecting you with so-and-so and so-and-so. And so sometimes you just have to plant the seed, let this person know that you're open to more business, that you have capacity, that you're interested in connections. And even if it isn't a direct client, tell them what other professionals you'd like to meet. So they might not have a client referral for you, but they might have another lawyer or another consultant or someone who may be a good person for you to know, because that person might refer you business and your clients might need their services. So I think that being open and listening, asking for what you need, and also following up, having that follow-up. I always joke that, good manners puts you over the top. There are a lot of great lawyers out there. Yeah. There are a lot of wonderful lawyers. You know how many times a client calls and says, well, I called 2 other referrals and they didn't call me back. The person that called me back.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the fact that I'm a great lawyer, but I called them back, that person now is appreciative. They're happy that we could help them. And they are going to think of us when they hear of someone else who needs our services. So having good manners really can go a long way. And I know it's something silly that people kind of joke about, but even just a thoughtful reminder, you learn something about a client, they're super interested in a certain topic or sport or book, and you send them that book with a little note. Yeah. Little gestures really do go a long way. So,
I mean, it's a hallmark of any sales process.
Yeah.
Follow up, pick up the phone, say hello. You don't have to really sell, just be present, right?
And we tell our team that you need to touch every client at least every 3 months. And so not every client in our business has a problem all the time. There are some clients we speak to weekly and some clients we speak to yearly, but they need to remember your name. They need to know you're out there. And so whether that's through a personal email, a newsletter, inviting them to a seminar, personally connecting with them, inviting them to a happy hour or a coffee or a hike or something, that just keeps you top of mind. So when a problem does arise, they don't forget who you are and call someone else.
Yeah, absolutely. So All right, so my next question that I wanted to ask is about, I think, the study of multimillionaires. I mean, it's something that I've been curious about lately. And I love John D. Rockefeller's quote where he said it's like your obligation to make as much money as you possibly can. There's nothing wrong with that, so that you can give as much as you get as well, you know? So money is part of this, that freedom, right? Do you study any multimillionaire that you kind of follow on social media you want to share?
So I don't necessarily study anyone, but I'm always fascinated about how people make money. And I think that the one thing I've learned in some of the groups I'm a part of, and I'm a part of a CEO group called the Women Presidents Organization, is they always talk about how do you turn your business into an asset. And for lawyers and for service providers, all we usually have to sell is our time.
Oh, yeah.
And time is limited. So the only way you can sell more is if you have more people. So thinking about how do you monetize certain parts of your business to be able to have that passive income is interesting. And I do think that, you can learn that from looking at other people, but I'm not a business book reader person. I read certain books, but I actually really just like watching other successful people. So I was thinking when you asked me this question about, people like Oprah or people like Ina Garten, for example, right? Ina had a whole other career and she loved cooking. So she followed her passion, but then she found a way to turn it into a moneymaker.
Yeah.
Right. So she got to have her passion of cooking and teaching people about cooking and having that hospitality side of her. But then she started selling cookbooks. Right. So think about what is something that you do that's unique to you or that's special. And then how do you turn that into something people want and need? Right. And Oprah, right? She had this great talk show. She taught all these people all these things. But in doing that, she created a whole economy around her favorite things and everyone else's favorite things, right?
I know, right? That's cheating, though. Oprah, everyone loves Oprah, Krista.
I know, but look what she did, right? She almost predicted the future of what people wanted and needed. So in your business, think about what isn't being done now, right? And if I could go back and think of the days of, there's like some of these lawyer platforms where people can go download documents and do it on their own. Those are great for us because they screw stuff up all the time. But it's a great way to monetize something that's very specific. So think about what you do and whether it's your training programs or online, documents or group consultations or coaching or however you can, hit more people, share the great work that you do and have that sort of passive income. I think that's always really interesting. And just what's the next wave in your business and your industry, When I went out on my own, everyone's like, how are you going to make money mainly advising and counseling people and not litigating? And it's true. I invoice 150 to 200 clients a month, where some litigators might only invoice 10 to 15 clients a month. But it means you have to have more clients, but you also get to touch more people. You have more clients that can refer you business, and you're really helping more people solve their problems. So there's lots of different ways to be successful. So kind of tap into what makes you unique, what you enjoy doing. And if you do it well, you're going to either recreate your own income or create a business that's sustainable. Because not everybody wants to create a business. Some people just want to create and recreate their own income, which is fine too.
Yeah. I love what you said about, really, it sounds like doing what you love, focusing on what you love, and that also moves you forward as well. And I love your concept of let's try to keep them out of court. Let's not wait until everything's falling apart, right? It's like,
and it's not always possible, but it's a goal and it's the way we try to focus our practice. And so we do our best.
So if you could go back in time and give your younger self some advice, what would those things be? Or just one advice. So it doesn't have to be a lot, but
well, I think for all you new professionals, or maybe even you older, more experienced professionals, back in the day, I think I jokingly call myself a train tracks person, right? I had this checklist of what I wanted to do in my life. And I sort of got on the train track.
The Capricorn thing. There's nothing wrong with list.
I checked the boxes, I went to a good college and I had fun experiences and I went to law school and I got the right job and I did all these things, right? And don't get me wrong, loved my life, had so much fun. There's so many ways I would never go back and change it. But I think that I probably could have taken a few detours and been perfectly fine. So the idea of not boxing yourself in, being open to different paths and different jobs. There are so many jobs out there that we don't even know are out there where you can make a whole bunch of money and be really happy and have flexibility. Yeah. And I think that sometimes we get in this blinder mindset of, well, this is what my family expects, or this is the only thing I'm good at. And so as I've gotten older and learned more about the growth mindset and changing your thinking, taking more risks, which I definitely am more of a risk taker now than I was when I was younger. Yeah. I think that being uncomfortable is important. If you aren't uncomfortable, you're not pushing yourself enough. And maybe you're okay with that. But if you want to grow and thrive and be an interesting dinner party guest, which is always kind of my bar, I tell my kids, you want to get invited to things, and people who are interesting get invited to things. Yeah. So know enough about the world, be up on current events, have something interesting to say, or else you're just another boring person that's holding up a seat. Yeah. And so I think I would tell myself to push and take a little more risks and kind of get outside the box a little more.
I love that. I love that. Krista, it's been great. Thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show and just sharing. This is something that I'm kind of redirecting the show towards lately, which is hearing about others' experiences. Because again, we're a hive mind. And we just need to share the information because one person knows more in one area over another. And this is the way we learn, by just giving to each other. So guys, please reach out to Krista, LinkedIn, follow her, see what she's reading right now. Actually, big question. What are you reading right now?
So right now, I'm always in the middle of a few books, but I'm reading a book called Necessary Endings, which would be my business book. It's a great book. I think everyone should read it for both personal and professional reasons. It really talks about sometimes endings need to happen in order to move you forward, both in your business and your personal life. So I think that's a great book. And then I'm reading a book called Lessons in Chemistry, which is a fun kind of beach summer read. I always like to have a few things like that going. And then I'm also reading a fiction book called This Is How It Ends. So I like a lot of the fiction kind of, interesting stories to learn about.
I mean, you learn things from them too, I think, It's like...
Yeah, there's so many good books out there. It's hard to pick, but I always try to have sort of one business worky kind of book going and several fun books going.
I love that. I love that idea. I think Alex Gilmet told me that as well, that he usually has like 3 books at a time, but definitely guys, reach out to Krista on LinkedIn, connect with her. As always, our mission statement is to introduce you to everyday experts and business owners in general so that they can share their experiences with you and inspire you. Listen, we've been up and down lately and we need to learn. And when you're in the dumps, thinking that you're the only one going through this, you're not. So I'm here to share and inspire. So every Thursday, 10 a.m. live. This is a live show. Actually, Krista, you were supposed to be on in June. Live did not go live because of a technical issue.
All right, it happens.
That's the beauty of it, though, right?
That's the beauty. You got to be resilient and go with the flow.
Exactly. So the quote that I wanted to end with was perfectly selected for the interview today, because I didn't even think that you would say half the things here, but your work is going to fill a large part of your life. And the only way to be truly satisfied is to do what you believe is great work. The only way to do great work is to love what you do. Steve Jobs. Thank you so much again, Krista, for being on the show. Thank you to folks. Thank you so much on the replay. I just love seeing that you guys are touching and sharing so much on the replay. I really appreciate
that. Nice to chat with everyone. Thanks for having me, Paula.
Oh, no, definitely. Definitely. Thanks for all the info today. And everyone, have a great rest of the day. Hope the weather is great where you are, and keep moving forward. Take care, everyone.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.
And we're